a sweeping 10% tariff on all Chinese imports, over $500 billion worth of goods. That's the bold new move from Washington. But Beijing wasn't caught off guard. It was ready. Within mere hours, 32 of China's most powerful firms launched a carefully coordinated response. Their targets? American tech giants and vital exports the U.S. economy can't live without. This isn't just another trade skirmish. It's a full-blown strategic economic clash, and the consequences could be enormous. Are we witnessing the moment the U.S. China rivalry crosses a line it can't return from? And what happens when sectors tied to America's economy, energy supply, and national security begin to feel the pressure? Let's unpack it all. Donald Trump, now back in the spotlight, has reinstated broad tariffs on Chinese imports, a flat 10% on every product. His goal? Narrow the trade deficit, shield American manufacturers, and put financial pressure on Beijing. But here's where things get messy. The United States heavily depends on Chinese imports, from smartphones and car parts to everyday goods and industrial machines. These tariffs won't just hit China. They'll raise costs for American businesses and families. And that leads us to the big question. What will China do in return? This isn't just any country. China is the world's second largest economy and the dominant global supplier of raw materials. An all-out economic confrontation could rattle global markets, paralyze production lines, and trigger new waves of inflation around the world. So how did Beijing respond so quickly? And why was it so ready? Ever since the first trade war with Trump, China has been laying the groundwork. Over the last 5 years, it's worked to cut its dependency on U.S. exports, broaden its trade ties, and strengthen its position in case of renewed conflict. So when the 10% tariffs were announced, China wasn't scrambling. It was executing a plan. In less than 24 hours, the Ministry of Commerce rolled out targeted countermeasures focused on high-impact American sectors, the kind that can't absorb a financial blow. This wasn't some reactionary move, it was a strategic strike. Here's how Beijing hit back. These are the 4 main tools it's using to shake up the U.S. economy. U.S. companies blacklisted. Leading American corporations are now restricted in the Chinese market. Tightened export controls. China is limiting access to rare earths and semiconductors, the core of modern technology. Tariffs on key American exports, agricultural goods, energy products, and automobiles are now in Beijing's crosshairs. Trade realignment. 32 Chinese firms have already formed new international partnerships, signaling a pivot away from the U.S. It gets worse. 2 major U.S.-linked companies, PVH, which owns Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, and Alcoa, a major player in the aluminum sector, have just been added to China's unreliable entity list. The consequences? Operations in China severely restricted, supply chains disrupted, costs rising. More importantly, it's a message. Beijing is prepared to freeze out major Western brands if Washington keeps escalating, but this isn't the only front. China's next move? Targeting something even more critical, raw materials essential to global tech. China currently dominates 70% of the world's rare earth production. That includes gallium and germanium, materials used in military systems, high-end semiconductors, and electric vehicles. Now China has clamped down on exports of these to the U.S. That hits hard. Defense companies depending on advanced chips. Silicon Valley firms already facing sourcing challenges. Automakers like Ford and Tesla, whose battery supply chains now face serious risks. Could China cut off these materials entirely? If tensions rise, that's not just a possibility, it's likely. And that's not all. China has long been a key buyer of U.S. liquefied natural gas, soybeans, and American-made vehicles. But with new tariffs, those industries are suddenly exposed. LNG. The U.S. has been shipping record volumes to China. A 25% tariff could tank that trade overnight. Agriculture. American soybean growers are still recovering from the last trade war. Another wave could bring multi-billion-dollar losses. Cars, companies like GM, Tesla, and Ford face potential new taxes that would price them out of China's enormous consumer market. But Beijing isn't just responding, it's repositioning. Just days after Washington raised tariffs, Chinese companies were already forging new partnerships abroad. Delegations have been dispatched to Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, regions with booming demand for Chinese investment and manufacturing. According to the China Chamber of Commerce for import and export of machinery and electronic products, the new focus is on Indonesia, Nigeria, and Saudi Arabia. Companies like Huawei, BYD, and CATL are cutting fresh deals and expanding operations. Meanwhile, Beijing is in talks with Brazil and Argentina to lower tariffs and reinforce its agricultural trade routes. Dr. Chen Wenling of the China Center for International Economic Exchanges told Caixin Global this marks China's strongest attempt yet to cut itself off from U.S. influence and deepen trade with BRICS and the Global South. And with China now behind more than half of Africa's infrastructure projects, it's not just shifting trade partners, it's rewriting the rules of global commerce. Beijing has already reduced its energy imports from the U.S. by over 60% in the past 5 years, and the new tariffs may push that number to zero. CNPC, the state oil giant, just inked a 30-year deal with Russia. Payments in yuan, not dollars. It's another move toward de-dollarization. Kazakhstan has pledged to triple oil pipeline capacity to China by 2030, and Saudi Aramco has already ramped up exports to a record 1.7 million barrels per day. Meanwhile, American LNG exports are plunging, and the American Petroleum Institute warns the tariffs could destroy U.S. energy competitiveness in Asia. China, meanwhile, is locking in supply and energy security for the long haul, but Beijing isn't stopping there. It's hitting back in tech. Chinese regulators have launched a sweeping antitrust investigation into Google's Android ecosystem, accusing it of monopoly practices in the mobile software market. The State Administration for Market Regulation is reportedly gathering data from Tencent, Huawei, and Xiaomi. If Google is found in violation, penalties could reach into the billions. It's clear payback. After U.S. sanctions devastated Huawei's smartphone business, China is now using its own regulatory tools to strike back. Professor Zhang Xiaojing of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences says this could spiral into a full-blown tech war, with the U.S. possibly tightening chip bans or even banning TikTok outright. But here's the danger for American tech companies. Google earns around $20 billion a year from China's ad and app market. If China cuts that revenue stream, it could trigger a wave of U.S. firms exiting the country entirely. Meanwhile, Washington's push to tax Chinese solar panels and lithium-ion batteries is already sparking backlash at home. According to the Solar Energy Industries Association, panel prices have jumped 19% since the last round of tariffs. This new wave could raise household costs by $1,500, and EV makers like Ford and Tesla are also under pressure. With 70% of global lithium refining controlled by China, shifting to alternative suppliers like Canada or Australia will take years. The Department of Energy warns that these tariffs could delay EV adoption by up to a decade as costs rise and material access tightens. The White House may want to bring manufacturing home, but right now, the numbers show tariffs could stall America's clean energy momentum while China pulls further ahead. And American households? They're about to feel it. The National Retail Federation says the 10% tariff will cost families an additional $1,200 a year. Prices are climbing for electronics, clothing, and appliances. Small businesses, which rely on affordable Chinese imports, are bracing for thinner margins and possible layoffs. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has issued a stark warning. The last trade war cost the country 245,000 jobs. This round could be even worse. Goldman Sachs predicts inflation could rise by 0.5 percentage point, enough to force the Federal Reserve to delay rate cuts. While China weathers some damage, it has alternatives. U.S. consumers do not. With supply chains breaking, prices rising, and retaliations mounting, the U.S.-China economic relationship is unraveling fast. Dr. Wang Huayao, president of the Center for China and Globalization, told the Financial Times that this decoupling isn't hypothetical anymore. It's unfolding before our eyes. Trade between the two superpowers has already dropped 15% year over year. China is doubling down on partnerships with BRICS. The U.S. is pivoting to Mexico and Vietnam, and global corporations Apple, Boeing, Qualcomm are now forced to choose sides in a world where neutrality is no longer an option. Are we heading toward rival trade blocs, a fractured global economy, or something even more dangerous? The answers to those questions are coming fast, and no one will be untouched. This isn't just a trade dispute anymore. This is a fundamental restructuring of the global economy, and the shockwaves will be felt for years to come. Is this a conflict we can still walk back from, or are we staring down a permanent divide between the world's two largest economies? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you found this video valuable, give it a like and subscribe. There's another video waiting for you now. Click and keep watching.